Don't forget, you can reach the latest episode of Potomac Watch anytime. Just ask your smart speaker, play the Opinion Potomac Watch podcast.
From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
Welcome back. Let's turn now to Trump's legal troubles. The drama on Thursday was testimony by Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis. Fani Willis has brought this sprawling case against President Trump and some of his aides and advisors for trying to overturn the 2020 election, including with RICO racketeering counts. And she's now facing a push to disqualify her from the case on the basis that she dated one of the prosecutors that she had hired to lead this prosecution. And embarrassing testimony, Kate. She acknowledged that they had a relationship. She said that it began after she had hired him and has since ended. She acknowledged that she and Nathan Wade, the prosecutor's name, went on vacations together, including a cruise. And then she said that she reimbursed him for her portion of those costs in cash. Let's listen to a piece of Fani Willis's testimony.
It's interesting that we're here about this money. Mr. Wade is used to women that, as he told me one time, the only thing a woman can do for him is make him a sandwich. We would have brutal arguments about the fact that I am your equal. I don't need anything from a man. A man is not a plan. A man is a companion. And so there was tension always in our relationship, which is why I would give him his money back. I don't need anybody to foot my bills. The only man who's ever foot my bills completely is my daddy.
Kate, what did you make of this testimony by the district attorney?
Wow, Kyle. It's not a great day if you're having to dissect these details of your personal life here. It's hard to see how she recovers from this testimony. I mean, the question everyone is focused on is, the conflict of interest, right? She appoints this prosecutor and there are questions about when the relationship started. And so the quest to find a conflict of interest. But I think really, though, her credibility to carry on the case is in trouble, even absent some complete finding of that way. I mean, she's describing, for instance, on the stand, going on these cruises with this man and his mom, and says he pays for the cruises, but she pays him back with large amounts of cash that she keeps in her home, which maybe it's true, but it's unfortunate that she can't produce a record showing that she paid her own way on these trips, and it is an odd explanation. And she struggled to answer some questions that seemed basic. The lawyer asked her repeatedly when they started dating or when their romantic relationship ended. And she gave some, musing about what does it mean for a relationship to end? And so the cumulative effect was just, she really, I think, struggled to maintain her credibility to continue moving forward on this case as an unbiased prosecutor who doesn't have a core conflict in how she's governed herself throughout the process. So it's very hard to see her recovering from it.
The defense that I'm seeing in the press, and I think in some of these legal filings, is exactly on that. What is the conflict of interest here? She had a personal relationship with a prosecutor in her office. I think that shows a lack of judgment, especially considering the stakes and the public notice that this case was going to inevitably attract. And her argument to the judge is, that doesn't mean that I have brought this prosecution in any sort of way that is improper, or that my judgment on this case from a legal standpoint has been affected. And Monet, it will be fascinating to see what the judge ultimately decides on that. And maybe it will just be that from the standpoint of this has become too much of a headache and too much of a mess, and in the interest of broader justice, it would be better to disqualify Fani Willis and get another prosecutor in who can carry the case to its conclusion.
Well, I think that the potential conflict for Fani Willis is self-explanatory in the sense that if she is paying one of her staffers in a way that is going to benefit her because they have a private relationship and that gives him more resources to spend on trips or dinners or what have you, that gives her an incentive to generate more work, which means that she has an incentive to bring charges whenever possible because that's going to generate more work that she can then use taxpayer money from Fulton County to fund, and which will redound to her benefit through Nathan Wade's personal account. And so whether or not she's able to show that there's no paper trail, directly connecting her payments to him from county funds to anything that they enjoyed in their personal life, the evidence of impropriety is still strong enough, I think, that it makes sense to say that she's no longer qualified to lead this case and that she was conflicted in some of her judgments about bringing charges. I do think that regardless of what the judge finds, it's clear that she's discredited herself in a way that's going to affect the case. If she ends up staying on it, it will hang over it. And as far as they're able to, the Trump team is going to continue to bring this up during the course of the trial. And if they remove her, that means another prosecutor is going to have to come in some ways, rebuild the case, perhaps take a different approach. And that is going to trouble the prosecution as well, just from the turnover and the disorder that comes along with that. So it's very clear that her lack of judgment has troubled the case that was already going to be very difficult against Donald Trump. And it's going to remain part of the story of that trial, regardless of what the judge decides about Fani Willis.
Hang tight. We'll be right back after one more break. Welcome back. Hey, we'll give you the last word, but the other news on Thursday was that the judge in New York has set a trial for the first criminal trial of Donald Trump. And remember, this is a case involving the hush money that Michael Cohen paid to Stormy Daniels before the 2016 election. The allegations are that the Trump business internally booked the repayment to Mr. Cohen as payment for legal services. So this is an interesting case because even legal minds who are not sympathetic to Donald Trump have argued that this case should not have been brought, in part because Alvin Bragg, the district attorney in Manhattan, jacked these charges up to felonies. But in order to make this bookkeeping crime, in order to be a felony, you have to also prove that the books were changed with an intent to commit a second crime or to conceal a second crime. And so, Kate, that has been the million-dollar question in this case is, what is the second crime? There's been some analysis in the media that maybe it is some kind of campaign finance violation, but it is far from clear that hush money like this counts as a campaign contribution for federal purposes. I could see that spending a lot of time up on appeal in the federal courts, maybe even going to the U.S. Supreme Court. And so it is notable, I think, that the first case to go to trial against Donald Trump, this is going to happen on March 25, apparently. It looks like one of the weaker cases that he faces.
Well, it's certainly the weakest case that he faces. I mean, compare it to the case dealing with classified documents and his handling of them. I think that most Americans are at least willing to entertain that as much more substantive based on what the allegations are. But the Alvin Bragg case is a bank shot that relies on, again, like you said, coming up with a second crime. And whether this amounts to a campaign finance violation just seems like a huge stretch. And I think, too, there's no benefit to the country in this dragging on for years and years as that makes its way through the appeals system, even if he were to be convicted. So, Trump thinks he benefits from this kind of persecution as he's able to sell it from his enemies. And then the case where this trial is going on in high election season, he might be right. I think eventually Democrats will regret having brought this one and rue the day, but we'll see.
Thank you, Kate Monet. Thank you all for listening. You can email us at pwpodcast@wsj.com. If you like the show, please hit that subscribe button, and we'll be back next week with another edition of Potomac Watch.